So our ongoing lesson tonight about busyness, what we're on tonight is express gratitude throughout the day. And I was tickled when somebody told me they had taken the sheet and were looking at it. They're not here tonight. But it's good to see how they were already working on the scripture and applying it. So I hope you'll have time during the week to look at the sheets that we give out. And this is from Philippians 4, verses 4 through 9. This is what I spoke on the last time I spoke at the rescue mission. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful bunch of scriptures and messages here. I'm going to read it in both the Message and the NIV so you can hear a little bit of the difference. In the Message, rejoice in the Lord always. I'll say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. And then in the NIV, celebrate God all day, every day. I mean, revel in Him. Sorry, the first one was NIV. This is Message. Celebrate God all day, every day. I mean, revel in Him. Make it as clear as you can to all you meet that you're on their side, working with them and not against them. Help them see that the Master is about to arrive. He could show up any minute. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praise shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of our lives. Summing it up, friends, I'd say to you, do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst. The beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Put into practice what you learned from me and what you heard and saw and realized. Do that, and God, who makes everything work together, will work you into His most excellent harmonies. Okay, verses 4 to 6, we're given some instructions. What instructions do you see in those verses?
Rejoice.
Rejoice.
Don't worry about anything.
Don't worry about anything. Don't be anxious. Let your gentleness be evident. Let your peace be evident. You ever been around somebody and you may be all fractious, but you're just around them and you know they're at peace, and it kind of helps you be at peace. And then the fourth thing it says is to pray. So right off the bat, Paul tells us, rejoice always. Let your gentleness be evident. Don't be anxious, and to pray. So this term, rejoice in the Lord. I always sing that little song, rejoice in the Lord always. And we'll sing it. And we hear that in a lot of Paul's writings, and I don't think I noticed until I was studying this week that it shows up so many times in the different writings. And I was thinking about why it does that. Why do you think Paul over and over and over told the first century Christians to rejoice? I think it's because they were in hard times. We can't imagine being the minority faith in a place where people were being killed, like Nero I talked about Sunday. And so it was easy, even in the excitement about Jesus, to get discouraged. But what do you think it means to rejoice in the Lord?
Be happy in what He is able to do for you, with you.
Live in the joy of God's love for us. Live in the joy. I was praying for somebody today, and they're in a really not good place. And I was praying God's peace and grace and mercy. And I thought, they don't want to hear this, but I have to say, and even joy, that they would find some joy in that. What might it mean, and practical terms, to rejoice in the Lord always. And we said it's, to be thankful, but what is it? How do we rejoice? Rejoicing is not dancing up and down the aisles with the tambourine, getting excited. Well, it may be, but not most of the time. What does it mean to rejoice in the Lord in practical terms?
For me, it's remembering the good things that God has done or is doing, even in the midst of the bad stuff that's going on.
And that remembering sometimes can be helped if you keep a gratitude journal. The person I said was looking at this and hadn't gotten to the class, hadn't been here yet, told me they were looking through some stuff they had. They found this little notebook, and they'd never done anything with it. And they realized from this they started keeping a gratitude journal, so that every day they jotted down something for which they were thankful. So remembering it, what else?
Show your love of the Lord by example.
Showing your love of the Lord by example. Yeah, reaching out. May also mean having little praise songs dance through your mind. Again, I'm saying that a lot of the stuff we get into in our minds, we can choose to change that direction. We can choose to change that direction. And affirming to ourselves God's love. There have been times in my life when I've been a big fan of sticky notes. Put one on your mirror, one on your steering wheel, somewhere that simply reminds us that God loves us. And to rejoice in that. Rejoice in that. And then what does it mean to let your gentleness be evident to all? That's a little bit of what Rhonda just said. To let your peace, your joy show to others. How do you do that in practical terms?
Right. Well, it's gone.
Sometimes it can be as simple as holding the door open for somebody.
Good deeds, good
Be
deeds.
kind, don't be cruel or mean.
Thank you.
Being even.
Mhm.
Being kind of even.
Yeah, being kind of even yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not like you have to walk up to somebody and say, I'm holding this door open for you because God told me to show you good things and be gentle and it would be evident.
You don't have to
That's
boast
show
about.
by example once again.
I mean, I've been around some people in my life who would be just that. I may not want to hold this door for you, but God said I have to. Also, sometimes we can get into this gentleness by simply remembering, not just the issues, the things, but remembering to let our gentleness show. Why do people today not show kindness or gentleness as often as maybe they did one day? Have you noticed in yourself, maybe you don't show that gentleness as much as you used to?
I think they're sometimes afraid to be seen as weak or like they could be taken advantage of.
And it's also not something that's celebrated in the general news and TV shows. Anybody ever watch God Friended Me? Anybody watch that on CBS on Monday nights, Sunday nights? It's one of the more positive shows that I've ever seen. And God is working through this guy who claims to be an atheist, which makes it even more fun. But there's nothing negative in the show. And people that are in trouble, these guys simply show them kindness and help them work through their problems. The text suggests antidotes to anxiety. Before we look at the antidotes, what makes you anxious? When you realize that you're anxious. I'll tell you a quick story. My sister one time, my little sister, when she was about, 5 or 6 maybe, she came to my mom and she was shaking. And Mom said, what is wrong with you? Turned out she had chills, but she said, I guess I'm just nervous. Because she'd seen other people talk about being nervous. But what makes you anxious?
Having to go to the doctor.
Having to go to the
Having
doctor.
to answer those stupid questions that they ask you. If you're all right, are you safe in your home? And,
Yes.
Yeah. Are there guns in your house?
yeah.
Well, I've never been asked that one. What else makes you anxious?
What I call not enoughness. I don't feel like I've got enough time or enough money or enough energy
Yeah.
or enough something.
That's a good one, Katie.
My little watch thing here takes my blood pressure and my pulse all the time. And I can click on it. the end of the day, I can call it up on my phone and see where it peaked. And it's interesting to me to see places I was anxious and maybe didn't identify as that. A prime example is at 10:55 on Sunday mornings. Why would I be anxious at 10:55 on Sunday mornings? I'm anxious to make sure everything comes together when we get church started. You know, now that's a silly thing to be anxious about, but I click into that. Family issues can make us anxious.
Can I throw something out there that
Sure.
it has nothing, I don't guess it does, with what we're going over tonight, but I'm gonna throw it out there because it's forgiveness. I'm still, the issues that I have, but I'm getting closer.
Good.
I'm getting closer. I almost said it today to myself, but I ain't quite ready to say I forgive you. I don't want to say it to the person. That's a different story.
But that's progress, Pat.
Oh, for me, you better believe it is.
And see, even dealing with issues can make us anxious. You know, when Pat starts talking about this forgiveness stuff, you ever watch her shoulders tighten up, her hands clench, you know? And I think the good thing about here is Paul assumes or understands or says we're going to have anxious times. Now, it'd be a nice thing we could all just be laid back and wonderful and nothing ever fazed us. If you see somebody like that all the time, they either have good meds or they're being delusional because there are things that are going to come up. So this question says, antidotes to anxiety in verses 6 through 7. Let's look at some of those antidotes. First of all, it says don't be anxious about anything. In telling people not to be anxious, he's assuming you're going to be anxious, right? And then he says, after that,
Take everything to God in prayer.
take everything to God in prayer. Too often we think of prayer as our last resort. Well, we've done all we can do. All we can do now is pray. Get a clue. Start with the prayer, and then you may need to redo it again. Yep, we can pray, and then we're also in the midst of that prayer supposed to tell God what the issues are. Now, if God already knows everything, what's the point in our telling God what we're anxious about?
Say it out loud. He knows, we know he knows, but we say it out loud. We are saying it out loud so we can hear it instead of think it.
So we can hear it instead of thinking, and so we can define it. You know? Now, am I really anxious that everything's going to come together and church is going to start on time? Yeah, but what I'm really anxious about is who's going to wonder why it's not. Who's going to blame it on me? Who's going to be critical about that? You say, well, nobody's going to do that. But in saying it out loud and telling God, it helps us define. And you'll get that feeling. If you're trying to fool God, you'll get that little feeling. That's one of the funniest things when we try to think we can hide stuff from God or fool God. We need to name it. In the Hebrew thought, if you can name something, you have control over it. If you can name something, you can bless it and curse it in the Jewish tradition. That's why they don't say the name of God. If they said the name of God, then they would have power over God. That makes sense to our Western brains, but that's how that works. Okay, so we can recognize it, we can remember to pray, we can tell God about it. And what's the last thing it tells us in verse 7? Or in verse 6, the last part of 6. What kind of prayer are they talking about there? Thanksgiving. Be grateful. Okay, you're still anxious. How are you supposed to be grateful? Grateful because you know that ultimately God's going to be in charge of it. God's going to take care of it. Does it happen instantly? No. Most anxieties don't go away instantly. But if we can hand more of it to God, then it becomes more tolerable for sure. What antidote is suggested in verse 8? I love this verse. What are we supposed to do in verse 8 to be less anxious?
Think about these things.
Think about these good things.
Be positive.
Think about these good things. You know, you can say, well, that's just all positive stuff. Actually, Paul is telling us right here, about changing our thinking. I don't know about some of you all, but when I get in the shower in the mornings, I've talked about this before, my thoughts go all over the place. And some days I get in the shower, and what I'm saying to myself and sometimes out loud is, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to do that today. I don't want to talk to those people today. I'm no good. I'm a failure. And I need to stop myself right then, which I'm usually able to do, and turn that around. Because again, saying it gives power to it. Thinking about it gives power to it. Look at these words that we're told to think on. Let's look at these for just a minute. Think on whatever is noble. Whatever is noble. A higher looking at. Out of the everyday. Looking for something better, higher. Whatever's right. It's a whole lot to talk about what's wrong. But think about the stuff that is right. And pure. That word always used to bother me because when I heard that I thought of white gloves. You know, make sure everything's perfectly clean. But pure in the Greek here simply means singleness of purpose. Think about what your real purpose is in one of these. Whatever is lovely. How many times do you use the word lovely? It's not a word that just comes out easily. What do you think, if something's lovely, how would you describe it? What are you trying to describe?
Something beautiful.
Beautiful?
This version says pleasing.
Pleasing? Yeah, lovely. Whatever is admirable. Whatever is excellent or praiseworthy. Think about these things. And then he goes on to the next verse and says, in the Message Bible, it says, think about what's, where is it? And farther down, farther, it says, think about the beautiful, not the ugly. There's a lot of ugly in the world, yes?
Yes.
A lot of ugly. And if we stay focused on that, where's our thinking going to go? To the ugly. It's kind of like, in a kind of a warped way, if you're on a diet, you're on a really strict diet, what do you think about? Food. All the things you're not supposed to eat, you know? We do that, and it's funny how we have to turn that thinking around. Sometimes I think Paul could be rewritten into a great motivational speaker, and that's what he was doing. Yes, he was telling people about the Lord, but he was telling these early Christians, life is going to be rough, and here's how you can get through it. Here's how you can make it through it. How might following these instructions in verses 8 to 9 help bring us God's peace? What difference does it make in your life if you think about the lovely, if you think about the right, if you think
Helps
about
you
the
get
pure?
through rough times.
Hmm?
Helps you get through the rough times.
Yeah.
Your whole, I don't know, set point of where you start from and where you move around from is just better. It'll just be about
It takes the heaviness off of you.
Mhm.
You know, like,
Helps us focus. Helps us focus on what's really important in life. And what makes us feel better or makes us feel worse. We can sit in here in a few minutes, I'm sure within 5 minutes we could have all of us depressed. You know? Talking about all the negative stuff's going on. Talk about the roof that might leak on the church again. Talk about this that needs fixing. Talk about that needs fixing. How are we going to reach these people? How are we going to do this? And if you take it with that attitude, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. But if we can focus on the positive things, on the good things, it does. It helps us focus and stay in a better frame of mind. How does the list in verse 8 compare and contrast to your daily focus? Kind of goes back to what I was asking earlier. What makes you anxious? Okay, we walk out of here tonight, we're going to have all these good thoughts. We're going to stay focused. What's going to happen to you in the next 24 hours that might pull you off focus?
stuff happens.
Stuff happens. It might be a mother that's driving you crazy because she won't make the decision.
that'd be crazy.
Well, I'm sorry.
Cause
And
I'm
rather
out
than
of me
upset
saying.
you, rather than upset you because she won't make the decision.
Honestly, it's really bizarre, speaking of that, because she kept apologizing to me and telling me, my mother's changed, you know, we went through a 10-year gap of, where she was very, judgmental and all this, and all of a sudden now she's changing, and it's like, she was apologizing to me for things that she had done, that made me feel that she didn't love me, and now she's telling me she loves me more now than she did over the past 10 years. I feel like I'm a child again. I go back to the younger times, so sometimes it can be half positive, half negative. Does that make sense?
Yes. It could be what draws us off focus, maybe getting a piece of mail we didn't expect. It's a bill. It could be getting a phone call from somebody who's not in a good space, and we're like misery loves company and wants to be with us. That's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. You say, if you're being so negative, I'm being real. But Paul would say, when stuff happens, you have an antidote. You have an alternative. You have a different way of thinking if we decide to do that. Now, none of us are going to be there. I won't be there to say, oh, don't be thinking that. Remember, we studied Bible study. But you might hear me in your head. You might go over. I really like the practice. I read Philippians probably at least once a month, the whole book, because it's so much on choosing the positive things in life. What are some practical ways you might shift your focus to rejoicing, petitioning, giving thanks, and thinking about what is praiseworthy? What can you do tomorrow? No matter what happens, what can you do tomorrow to stay focused on being grateful?
Sometimes I have to kind of break the spell of whatever I'm stuck in by doing something different.
Doing something that you enjoy.
Yeah, it might
Discourages
be
bad
running to
thoughts.
Goodwill. It might be playing with puppies. But something that just changes your whatever, and somehow that opens you up to thinking about the good things again.
I try to tell myself, get out of my head, you're not going to steal my joy. You're not living rent-free in my head.
Yes. Say that again.
You're not living rent-free in my head. Is that directed back to me for me to think
I
about
want to make
something?
sure you heard it again. Make sure you heard it again. Sometimes it can mean not turning the television on. Sometimes it can mean what channel you're listening to on the radio. Sometimes it means calling up somebody that you know is going to be positive with you, or contacting them on Facebook or something. One of the things about Facebook is I love that you can scroll, you know, and if I'm looking at something I begin to feel like it's negative, I just move on by. Move on by. And if it really bothers me, I just delete it. But move on by. Expressing gratitude throughout the day. I like the title being that way because it's not a once a day vitamin. It's not like you get up and you say, okay, God, good morning, I'm going to be grateful today, and go on. It needs to be part of our every action, every hour, sometimes every minute, to say, I'm going to be thankful. I'm going to be grateful.
And that reminds me, it's sort of like that, what in this room am I grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can do that at any moment. It can be a person, it can be a pretty flower arrangement, it could be that this is my home and I have a roof over my head or whatever, but just that little quick moment can just shift the brain a little bit.
I don't know how your day is going to go tomorrow. I don't have a clue how my day is going to go, except I have blood work at 9:30. But I would like to challenge us at 10 o'clock tomorrow, wherever we are, to simply look or think and be thankful for one thing. Just one thing. Now, why did I pick a particular time? Because I think there's something about the combined energy with that. And if you don't remember at 10, don't beat yourself up, 10:05, 10:30. But think about something you're thankful for. Tell me something, if you will, right now, that you're thankful for. Just one thing. Anybody have one thing they're thankful for?
My daughters.
Family.
My mom and my grandson.
Cooler weather.
Yes. Yes. I'm thankful to be able to teach Bible study. I'm thankful to be able to do that. An attitude of gratitude, you'll hear that phrase often from people. But if we learn to live in that gratitude, live in it, it's a whole lot easier than having to constantly remind ourselves. I'm going to encourage you to put a note somewhere. Whether it's on your bathroom mirror, in your car somewhere. Remember to be thankful. Remember to be thankful. Now, how does that fit in with this overall topic of busyness? I didn't say busyness one time in this, did I? So why in the world did they do this chapter, this lesson?
To help you slow down.
Help us slow
To
down.
really think about what the good that we have in our life and pass it on.
I think part of the reason it's in this lesson too is because when we get so busy, we forget to be thankful. Kind of the slowing down, but we forget to be thankful. When we get real busy, we get caught up in what the busyness is, not the good stuff. I love how the trees are finally changing around here a little bit. And if you're so caught up in getting past that car, gotta get in the right lane, we miss the beauty. We miss the beauty, the busyness. When we're so busy too, we get caught up in everything we need to do, have to do. We forget to be thankful for what we do have. What we do have, what we can use. Busyness. We're going to do 2 more next week and 1 more week on this book of busyness. And then the last 3 weeks, will be 3 weeks in November, we're going to be working at teaching from the book of Colossians. Just kind of walking through it. Some of you have been in my Bible studies before, you know how we do that. Just kind of go through and look at it. And then during December, those 4 weeks of Advent, we're going to look at each gospel and how it tells the Jesus birth story. Because they're all different. You know that. I love the Christmas plays because it just combines everybody. But we're going to be looking at what the gospel writer says about the birth of Jesus, or what they don't say, and how that fits into their purpose. So give you a little ahead of time on that. So at least 1 more, 2 more on this busyness, and then we're going to look at the book of Colossians. Why Colossians? It's another one of those books that Paul wrote to early Christians who were in the midst of political, economic, theological conflict. Does that sound like maybe today? Right now? And so we'll have a way of looking at that. Comments? Prayer requests? Praises? We've already talked about some things for which we're thankful.
I have one comment. Y'all have heard me talk about Sharon a lot. If there's anybody that has room to be upset, unhappy, whatever, it's Sharon. She's got, I think, 4th stage cancer for years and just stuff. She's so positive, it's amazing. Every now and then she needs a moment of that, reality of this is the icky part for me. And she'll have like a moment, literally a moment of just this and that. For most people, it would be complaining if it went on, but it's just a statement of the reality of where she is, and she'll go, okay, now that's my pity for the party for the month, I'm done now. And that's and she just cuts it off right there. It's amazing. And I've learned a lot from, and she's done that for 40 years. It's amazing.
It's again that refocusing, not denying the reality. Did you hear that in Paul? Paul didn't say you're going to hell if you're anxious. He didn't say you're not a Christian if you're anxious. He says get free of anxiety. Get free and be grateful and be thankful. Now, before we close in prayer, our lesson next week is on rest and rely on God. Some of us are really good at this, but some of us don't dare want to slow down because, oh my goodness, what might we have to face if we slow down? Pass it over to Russell, please.
Could I have one from Gene?
Oh, I guess. You ever lose your sheet? I always have these in the back of the church, by the bulletins on Sunday, so you can pick up another one. It was brought up a while ago, before class started, about the possibility of having a daytime Bible study for some folks who might want to do it rather in the day than the evening. Some of us work and that wouldn't work, but we're thinking about it. And maybe we'll have something even in the month of December that will meet at 9 o'clock, no way. God, I get up to 7:30, so it takes me a while to get in gear with God. But like maybe noonish, we could even do bag lunch or something. Think about it. Loving God, I thank you for this lesson tonight on thankfulness and gratitude and anxiety. In the next coming days, when we think about all the fretful things, may we simply stop and give you thanks. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, put something in our vision, something in our thinking, something for which we can be especially thankful. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.